Welcome along to day 2 of Journalism Media Week here at Leeds Trinity University. Just before we hand over to our alumni panel, which is going to be very, very exciting, just a small note of a slight tweak to the timetable today. As we say, it's always a movable feast, Journalism Media Week. Unfortunately, Lee Kane cannot be with us this afternoon. This is the 1 o'clock session this afternoon. He can't be with us this afternoon, but we have added in the Sheffield Star sports journalist. Yes, I know you're happy, James, because I've been a Sheffield Wednesday fan. So Alex is going to be with us a little bit later on this afternoon from 1, and he is an ex-alumni as well. But without further ado, let's hand over to your panel host this morning. Please make some noise for the broadcast journalism programme leader, Catherine Blair.
Thank you, everyone, and really welcome to day 2. Fantastic week again this year, and our 13th. And I'm so delighted that I get to speak to the alumni panel for the second year in a row. And, you know, I am reminded every time that I speak to alumni that, a few years ago, one of our MAs who was sitting, on the front row said to me during Journalism Week, Catherine, I've made it if I get invited back to Journalism Week. And we get such great graduates from our courses, from our undergraduate and our postgraduate. And we have a lovely selection here today. We have one online. So I'm going to start with allowing them to say hello to you themselves and telling you when they graduated, who they are, what they're doing now. So if we can start online, Ashley, with you first. Good morning.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't make it in person. I graduated in 2019 from sports journalism, and I now work for the Huddersfield Town Foundation, who are the registered charity of Huddersfield Town, and I work as a marketing and communications executive. So anything across social, websites, external press, and anything in between, really.
Great. Well, a warm welcome. And then here, right to my left, we've got Tom.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom. I'm from Northampton, but I graduated recently this year, and I work for ITV Content Delivery. So we work with film transfer, digitisation, and restoration of film assets. So yeah, that's me.
Yes, we'll come and get us when. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and moving on.
Hi guys, I'm Kieran. I graduated from sports journalism in 2020. I'm now the Caterers marketing manager. Caterers are an MMA promotion, so you might know Conor McGregor, Paddy Pimblett, Michael Bisping. They all came through Caterers. As marketing manager, I run their socials, advertising on their website.
Hi, I'm Haleema. I graduated from Leeds Trinity University this summer, and I work as a news reporter with Telegraph and Argus in Bradford. So I'm just a day-to-day reporter, and I source stories and interview people. That's it.
Hi, I'm George. I graduated in 2020 from the MA in journalism. I'm a bit different. I'm a freelance copywriter and influencer, though I don't like to use that term.
Okay, well, welcome all. And Ashley, if we could go back to start with you, because I think what people here, journalism students currently, are wondering is how they make the leap from sitting in this room, listening to people like you, to actually being in a job. So how did you make that leap?
Well, I think I was quite a fortunate route, really. Towards the end of first year, I actually applied for a sort of a national competition run by Barclays Bank. I think they coined it Work Experience of a Lifetime, and there were a lot of sort of national sports clubs, organisations where you could go and work experience. Applied for that without thinking anything of it, really. But a couple of months later, I got a call from someone at the Premier League. They offered me a week's work experience there, so I went down to the Premier League offices in London. They put me up in a nice hotel, which was good. Spent a week there. Did a bit at Stockley Park as well, which is where sort of all the VAR is now based. And from there, they sort of offered me paid freelance shifts, and I'm now still doing paid freelance shifts for them 4.5 years later. So I do that on the side, and then from graduating, I went into a job in a gambling agency in Leeds before moving to Huddersfield Town last year.
Okay, and is there any tips that you can give to our current students about sort of making those networking links? That's always the big thing. How do you start a conversation and sort of make those openings work for you, especially making use of a placement, for example?
I think for me, it was just I use LinkedIn a lot. So I always knew I wanted to work in the sports industry, and more rather than journalistically, more sort of the PR, working in-house side of things. So anyone at a football club, I'd be sending them a message just saying, hi, can we connect? I'd just like to learn a bit more about what you do. And then we obviously had great events like this. And first year I did a placement at a local sports agency called Planet Sport. From there, they introduced me to a lot of people. So I think once you make that initial step in and just speak to people, you'll then find so many more avenues and doors that lead you in different directions.
Okay. And Tom, you were sort of nodding there as well. Do you agree with some of those comments?
Yeah, I was going to say LinkedIn was probably one of the most useful assets for me at university, especially like coming into like a placement as well. Like these placements are not only just like something to get your credits, your marks, points, whatever. They actually really do matter. Like for me, I did my first year placement where I'm working now. I didn't want to leave actually. It was only a 2-week placement. It was short but sweet. But yeah, afterwards I was kind of just nagging Bethan and Sunny, who are my superiors at the minute. Just like if I could come back, what they were doing, just checking in with them all the time. Sadly, second year placement didn't really happen for me because COVID struck. So yeah, I kind of clung on to, you know, the connections I already had, and that in turn worked out very beneficial to me. So yeah.
And for those who don't know, tell us a little bit more about ITV content delivery. What does that mean?
So content delivery typically work with assets that have already existed previously. We've got a ginormous archive filled with assets that we will eventually digitize. But yeah, we work with a lot of clients in and outside of the UK, delivering materials across the globe, really. But yeah, we transfer them to formats that are now available to use rather than the ones that are suddenly like not in action anymore, I guess. But yeah, we work a lot alongside BritBox, with broadcasts as well. We've got a live capture team that deal with all the capturing of live programs so they can be put onto the ITV Hub and other VOD servers and stuff like that.
Okay. Kieran, was it placement for you that led to your job?
So I've always been a fan of MMA. So while I was studying my degree, just about every month I'd go down to at least one MMA event. So whether that be Bellator, Cage Warriors, just a local show. And started networking that way, handing in my CV. I was making sure I took like at least 10 copies of my CV, just hand out because you never know who's there. So you go to some events, there'll be no one else there, and you've got pressure by yourself. Because other events, you've got like a press manager, you'll have BBC Sport there, maybe an agency doing marketing there. And I found that was a really good way. And then connecting with those people on LinkedIn as well, and keep on track on what promotion they're doing and things like that. Just so happened that I connected with the caterers marketing manager during that time. Noticed during the COVID period, he was sort of leaving. He was going to work in charity, and the job became available. So I started speaking to him and the caterer COO about possibly applying for the role. Went through the application process, and luckily got the job. So.
Great. Now, Haleema, tell us, because you got your job at the TNA before you even graduated. So tell us how you got that.
Yeah, so I really found Leeds Trinity helpful because my first year I got placement for 2 weeks at Halifax Courier, and they do a lot of work across the titles of my hometown Batley, and I really wanted to write for the Batley News. So I went and I did 2 weeks there, and it was really inspiring because my lecturer Rebecca helped me get the placement, and I think that by really working with your lecturers and finding out who they know, you really get to know the industry as well, because they come from so many different backgrounds. So that was my first year of placement, but in my second year it was COVID, so I didn't really have much of a placement. But the Leeds Trinity office, they got in touch and said, oh, there's a news company who are looking for students who want to be part of their team for the summer. So I did 4 weeks at a news agency called SWNS, and they're an agency and they provide news stories to all the nationals. And I did a couple of weeks there, and it was I realized that actually I really do want to work in, like, because with national stories, normally it's the local story that goes viral. So I realized that local news was really interesting and it's something that I wanted to pursue. But then it was third year in a pandemic as well. So I was doing a lot of work online, and one of my modules, which is the one where you have to create a website in third year. I created a website called Hijabi Culture, and I was sharing stories of scarf-wearing girls or women who are doing really well in their field. And I use this as a forward. So every time I had an interview, I pushed this to the forefront that there's people like me who are doing really, really well across the board. And I think that's what caught a lot of interviewers' eyes. And I think that's why I'm in my job today.
Yeah, and I think you've recently been on television with one of our other graduates as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Catherine reached out, and one of her ex-broadcast journalism students has a show on British Muslim TV, and she spoke to me and said, do you want to go on live television and talk about your website? And yeah, I jumped at the opportunity. And yeah, I got to speak to lots of people about hijabi culture and the stories behind it and why it's so important to share these stories.
Okay, George, so as a freelancer, that's a really tough gig, but you are working for yourself, so you're kind of creating your own destiny.
Yeah. Well, I also had a placement at Female First, which is a kind of sub-branch of Planet Sport, which was mentioned on the screen. So I met with Simon, the founder of Female First, in my MA. But then COVID hit in the middle of my MA, so I couldn't actually do any of the placements, so it was cut short. But Simon randomly called me in about November, and offered me a job. So I'm now a relationships columnist for Female First. I'm very much a lifestyle journalist. So the placements and the connections from Leeds Trinity definitely did help my freelance career. And I still freelance for Female First now.
Okay, so your Female First is still a gig for you, but you're also, you mentioned you're an influencer as well. So let's talk a little bit about Instagram and how you keep sort of everything sort of separate, but kind of make it work for you.
So I started my sober Instagram just because I kind of wanted to brand myself almost as a journalist. I wasn't really sure where I kind of sat in the media industry. I've always liked talking about lifestyle and health, but I became really passionate about my sober journey. So I started the Instagram just to kind of share my journey of mental health and sobriety, but also kind of from a career perspective to kind of pinpoint myself in the media industry as a sobriety journalist. Okay. And that was kind of the way I built my brand.
Are we able to show that now? Or? So George is just going to plug in and give us a little spool through. So tell us about some of your stories.
So I did just start this a few months ago. So primarily it started off as kind of sobriety, reviewing alcohol-free spirits and drinks. But then it kind of led on to mental health. So here's me drinking an alcohol-free pint, which I got very excited about. And it's just really wholesome content, like me going out for brunch, what you can do instead of drinking. I was a huge party animal at uni, as I'm sure Jenny knows. I did brand myself as social sec of the MA. So just what you can do instead of drinking, but also how you can handle being a young woman in the media industry where I swear every event has free alcohol. So yeah, that was just kind of what I started doing. I also talk a bit about working sustainably instead of hard and kind of burning out. You can see there's the book by Grace Beverley, Working Hard, Hardly Working, and just finding kind of a sustainable lifestyle, not drinking loads, not eating fast food, and kind of looking after yourself more so you can kind of progress in your career.
Okay. Good. Well, if we can go back to say hello again to Ashley and just check in with Ashley if you can still hear us. And really, I'm just curious about some of the stories that you took away, some of the incidences from university, some of the learning that you did. Is there anything that you've brought into your job now? Is there anything that stays with you from what you've learned, or have you just cast Leeds Trinity aside in your as a long forgotten memory?
No, definitely not, Catherine. I think obviously being a sports-related course, we're all encouraged to have a wide knowledge of any sport possible. And obviously, a lot of my work is football-based now, but we do tend to, some of our delivery, we do other sports. So just having that basic knowledge of other sports is always helpful. And the main thing I took really is the ability to write. I think probably 80, 85, maybe 90% of my work is writing, whether that be for more short form stuff like socials or longer form stuff for website, or even writing briefs for our first team players who come and visit or anything like that. So I think the ability to write in a range of formats is the main thing I took away, because it's something that I do probably, as I say, the majority of my time.
Okay, and obviously a lot of our sports journalists come in because they love football, and you've got that, you've got the job that you obviously we're really keen to get from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not. We're a charity, so we don't preliminarily work in football. As I say, it's a lot of storytelling. So we do sessions for children as young as 5 years old up to walking football, where adults are 75, 80. So it's a lot of profile of people. But as I say, yeah, there is the sporting element to it. So we work quite closely with the club's media teams. They'll help us with all our video and design production. And often now, thankfully, over the last couple of months, COVID restrictions have eased, and we regularly, as I say, we have first team visits, we have first team staff visits. Any town fans, you'll know people like Michael Effler, who's club ambassador. He's frequently down here. So yeah, it is a bit of a mix, and even we get to work often at the stadium or the club's training ground, Canal Side. So just brushing past them in the corridor is always a bit of a buzz, definitely.
Well, and yesterday we had Sally Nugent and her team from BBC Breakfast in, and they were discussing how they're making use of sport to tell very human stories. And I guess that's something that you're drawing on by the work of the foundation as well.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the majority of people who engage with us as a charity do it via sport. So whether that be playing walking football, we have mental health football, we have half-term camps for children, but we also do a lot of educational stuff as well. So we work in primary schools and secondary schools, and that can be on PSHE, English, IT, maths. So as you say, yeah, the majority of it is sports related, but we do look to branch out and try and let people know that we do a lot more.
Great. And Tom, if we could turn to you now, then what sort of learning experiences have you taken away and made use of in your current job?
Well, I feel like university life and education throughout university definitely prepares you and lines your stomach to the world of work. For me, I just definitely used all the assets that uni provided us with. Little did you know, your lecturers are actually there to support you, so you can send them drafts, bits and bobs, and they'll give you feedback and stuff like that. And the whole library is about for you. But yeah, like I basically, well, obviously my third year was throughout the whole of lockdown, so I was entirely online. So I just made sure within that time that I had my own like schedule for time management, what I was focusing on each day, making sure that I had weekly meetings with my lecturers just to catch up. Even if it's just discussing new ideas, something really small, it could definitely help you out in the long run. I definitely felt like I utilized that throughout my degree, and it paid off. So, yeah.
Okay. And is there anything that you think you're going to evolve into? Is this the end of the line for you, or what do you hope to sort of move on to?
I definitely hope that this is just the start of my career. I mean, I've launched myself into a right decent company, a great one at that. So yeah, I've just got to see how things arise in the future. Hopefully I'll stepping stone my way up the ranks. Who knows? But yeah.
Okay. And Kieran, a lot of sports journalists do come into our course because they love football, but obviously you've taken slightly more niche sport and you've run with it. So is that something that was a good sort of tactic for you, or is just your love for that sport?
I suppose part of it was tactical as well. just about everyone can write about football. Sorry, lads, it's the truth. It's the most common sport to cover. So get yourself a niche. But just, also making connections. You need to write about, I think as a sport journalist, you need to be able to write about the sort of 5 main sports in the UK and the 5 most popular, but also having that niche there. I did a work experience at the Yorkshire Post. They knew about having combat sports experience, so they were able to set me up with a few boxers to interview who had big fights while I was there. But yeah, I'd definitely say having a niche definitely helps. If anything, when you want to build a brand on Twitter and social media, having that niche sport definitely helps with that as well.
And what about your lessons that you've taken away then?
I'd definitely make use of your lecturers and the lectures you go into. You're paying $9.25 a year minimum, plus whether you're paying for halls or whatever. Get your money's worth. You've got all these lectures, you've got all these lecturers, fantastic lecturers who worked in the industry. Ask them questions, go to them with drafts, ask them about possibly connecting with people. $9.25, it's a lot of money. Use it wisely.
Okay. Haleema, any takeaways?
Yeah, so practical journalism for all journalism students is one of the most valuable things you'll ever sit through. At the time, it can be a bit daunting. You think, oh my God, I've got to take a camera and stand up and interview random people. But when you're going to journalism, that's actually what you have to do. You've just got to go and speak to really random people. And sometimes you don't even know who you're speaking to. So I think I took a couple of tips from my lecturers. So I always make sure that at the end of when I'm recording something, I always ask people to spell their names out. And one of my lecturers told me to do that, so that you don't make any mistakes, and always ask them, is there anything that you want to tell me, or is there anything that I've left out? Because you have questions prepared and sometimes you go off tangent, but then sometimes they've got that little nib of information that you haven't asked and it really makes your article. So really listen to what your lecturers tell you and use it, because it is really helpful.
And I know that last year or the year before, when we were doing Yorkshire Voice, and there was, the trouble at the school in Batley. Tell us that story, because you just decided to go out and do some filming for us, really.
Yeah, so I had a bit of my NCTJ portfolio left, and I needed to do some video, and I really struggled with video. I found it really daunting, but at the protests outside Batley Grammar High School about the teacher, and it was barely close to me, it was just down the road. So I thought, you know what, now is the moment that I'm going to either make it or break it as a journalist. So I had equipment from university at home, so I took that and I stood out there and I recorded people and spoke to people. But I was stood among ITV journalists, BBC, the Daily Mirror were there, the Daily Mail were there, and I got to network with so many people, and a lot of people were really interested in why I was stood there. And I was like, oh, I'm a university student, I'm covering this for our paper, for our online website. And they actually hadn't seen a journalism program that was so evolved that we were doing the work of journalists.
And George, is there any takeaways that you've got?
I think my main one is, especially with the MA, there's so many exams and coursework, and it can get very, very stressful. But I think the main thing for me was actually figuring out if I enjoy what I'm doing. You kind of need to take a step back from time to time. And I know you're studying and you're trying to film kind of journalists and all of this, but you need to figure out if what you're doing is something you actually want to continue to do. For me, it wasn't what I wanted to do. News journalism wasn't for me. But then I went into a job as a web designer, and then they wanted me to do social media, and they were going to hire kind of a videographer. And I was like, no, I got it. Whipped out my tripod and could use my phone as a camera, thanks to Kath. So even if you don't love every aspect of it, it definitely ties into the rest of your career.
And I just want to touch on a couple of things, George, because with your Instagram particularly, you're putting very personal stuff out there. And how do you mix that? Do you feel safe doing that? Or do you feel like you're opening yourself up?
I've always done that with my journalism. It's something I specialize in. Kind of talking about mental health is something that I love to do. But it has come back to bite me quite a few times in job interviews. Employers have found my Instagram and then kind of read everything about me before I've even had a chance to tell them myself. So that's quite difficult. People can kind of get a perception of you before you've had a chance to share your own story. Would
you recommend, like, closing things down on personal sites? Obviously employers really do. We always tell people that employers will be looking at all your socials, so be careful what you post. But you've had experience of that.
So my personal Instagram is private, but hungover, my sober one isn't. And that was kind of a personal decision that I made, that I didn't want to be ashamed of my mental health. And I actually think that kind of accepting your mental health, and it's part of who I am. It's always going to be a part of me. I'm not going to go into a job and pretend I don't have anxiety, because it'll come out eventually. So it's a decision that I made, but there have been conversations with my parents, especially when they've said, maybe you should put it on private. But I'm a freelancer, it's what I do. And I think it's a really important part of the industry, not to hide your mental health, but to embrace it.
Okay, and not to like put you still on the spot, but so we're not going up and down the road so much. In terms of the freelancing, how do you make that work? Because obviously, you know, you're running a business; it's your own business, and your own brand. But how are you making that work for you?
A lot of time. I don't get holidays. I don't get weekends. I work overtime. I work very, very hard. But I think if you love it, I love being my own boss. I love working from home. I love deciding what I work on. Having that power is something really important for my mental health. Knowing that I can choose to say no to things, but also to say yes. And I think it really comes down to loving what you do. I love writing. It's always been a part of who I am. But I also push myself to do more video content, and also social media. So I think hard work, an actual interest in the topic, you're never going to succeed as a freelancer if you don't really want it. And just being willing to work very long hours.
And has there been a highlight so far for you?
I think in January, I was published in Business Insider, and it actually led on to a whole series of articles on the Mediterranean diet. And it's such a random thing, but it's such a big moment for me because I've been working so hard to get published in a major magazine online. And that was a huge thing. And I still work with them now. So it really shows that just networking and keeping up that relationship is important.
Right. And Haleema, if we can come to you, you haven't had much time in the job yet, you know, it's only been a few months, but have you had any highlights? Has it been everything that you hoped it would be?
Yeah, it's been exciting, I have to say. And the first time I got a press release, and it was to be invited to the Alhambra to interview the members of the pantomime. And then right at the bottom it said Dr. Rand would be in it from ITV, and I watch ITV this morning all the time, so I was like an extra happy moment. I was like, yeah. So I got to sit opposite Dr. Rand and like asking loads of questions about being in the pantomime and stuff like that. But then on the other side of it, there was a really small local story about a group of people in Bradford who were teaching basic life support, and it was something that was really, really expensive to teach, but they said, we're going to do it for free because it's a necessity and everybody needs to know. And I wrote the article, and within a day, a school got in touch and said, can you come and teach it for us? And that school was part of an academy, and in total it was 9,000 students, and so many other people got into it, and they all just wanted to learn basic life support. So that group of people is now expanding, and they're getting as many volunteers as possible so they can go out and teach all these students basic life support. And it's just amazing how your little story can affect so many people.
Kieran, highlights so far?
Oh, so many. I've only been in the job like 6 months, but a lot of the guys I work with fighter-wise, I interviewed as a journalist while studying at Leeds Trinity. I've now worked with them as the marketing manager at Caterers, helping them with their social media and helping them get interviews. And now seeing some of those guys go to the UFC, so I've sort of seen their whole cycle through their professional career. But also like seeing, just networking with people, having now people ask me questions that I was asking people before about getting into the industry. I think that's when you know you've made it, when people are asking you the same questions you were asking 2-3 years ago.
Good. Tom?
My highlight initially would definitely be from walking into a placement near enough 2 years prior to getting this job, almost 6 months ago, and just feel so comfortable with everyone and feel like a part of the team. And like, I think a highlight for me is also been working on BritBox content. So a lot of shows that you see on television are normally hard-parted, meaning that they've got ad breaks in between. So my job was to make a seamless, continuous program and reclock it ready for its delivery on BritBox. And then to see it, as we've got like this live feed in the office, and to see it advertised being like placed on BritBox like within the next coming weeks is just like full circle, really, because it's like, oh, that's my work, that's what I've done. But yeah, I think another thing for me is definitely starting to feel like a reliable team member. So being asked to do something, I know the process and I don't have to ask anybody. So it's like standing on your own 2 feet and becoming your own person within the industry that you're working in.
Good. Ashley, what about you in terms of highlights?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably an event we ran only sort of 2 weeks ago. We worked with club partner Utilita and the English Football League to put together an event called the Utilita Football Festival, where we had sort of, I think it's about 250 young children taking part in football and a range of other activities. But from a personal point of view, we got to organise, we liaised with, we had Huddersfield Town women's team players come along, we had Huddersfield Town's men's team players come along, and we also had ex-England international David James. He came along, so it was great to be sort of a point of contact for him so he could learn exactly what we did. We got to interview him on camera, as well as the men's and women's team players. So that was probably a particular highlight, just working with 2 such reputable organisations and then interviewing ex-footballers and current footballers is always a bonus.
Great. Well, I'm sure that we've got lots of questions in our audience here and perhaps online as well. So I'm going to open it up now to the forum to see if you've got any questions for our panel. Have we got any mics, or do you want me to? Me? That's me. Oh, God. I would have worn flat shoes.
So I was just wondering, like, do you ever step back and just look at your careers and go, wow, I've achieved this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think part of being successful in life and the careers is taking that time to step back and reflect on what you've done, how far you've came, but also what you still need to learn. I think that'd be some sort of key advice for you, is always take the time to step back, analyse, review. I know you do reflective reports on some of your assignments, maybe not do that much, but at least step back a little bit and just see how far you've came.
Okay, another question here.
How did you go about getting your placements?
Me? I don't know. Okay. Well, actually, mine was also a placement opportunity provided by the university placement team. To be fair, it's really worth looking at them as soon as they arrive and just keep your eyes peeled on that website at all times, because there is really rewarding opportunities available. You've just got to be quick enough to get there, I guess. Another thing as well to take advantage of is, the placement team and careers advice service. They've got excellent assets when helping with CVs, preparing for job interviews. I know Tom McGlynn, shout out to him if he's watching. I don't know if he is. But yeah, he literally ran through interview questions with me for days and days, making sure that I was going to nail this interview. And yeah, utilize that because it is beneficial.
Any others?
I think whilst using the placement team is really beneficial, but I'd say just look at where you want to work and drop them an email, because so often they are looking for students to do a bit of work, and if you put your name out there, they'll come back to you as well. So yeah, don't be afraid to just go out there and pitch yourself to brands. Okay, another question.
Yeah, sorry, this one was originally for Ash. Hi Ash, it's Rob. Congrats on your job. What's your next step in your career? Is it to work at a bigger club or to get to a higher role in your current job?
Yeah, a bit of context on know Rob. So the bigger club line is from him because he's a Leeds fan. Yeah, I think for me, ultimately, I'd love to work in this sort of professional football environment as I am now. Really, obviously more probably in the club side. So working on every home match day, every away match day, following the team, that sort of thing. But I've also got. Who knows? I'm obviously still doing the freelance work on the side, so that might be something I look to pursue in the future, if life takes that away. But I think, yeah, ultimately, I'd love to work in stay in football and go into the more club side of things. Definitely.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is a question for George. Do you think because you've connected your sobriety to so many people, do you think it's easier or harder to maintain that?
What, my sobriety?
Yeah.
That was one of the things I did it for, accountability. Definitely. I can't really drink now because 700 people would know.
Any other questions?
Hi, George. This sort of relates to that. I was wondering if you've ever experienced through networking, you hear of many industries smoking or drinking outside of the workplace is often encouraged to network. I don't know if any of the panel have experienced that or whether the industry is changing, but if you've got any experiences of that, be interested to know.
So this is something I have experienced. Definitely kind of pub nights, on Friday night after work when I've worked in offices, that's always been the thing. I did have a full-time job straight out of my MA. And it was one of the reasons I stopped drinking, purely because I just don't think it benefits you career-wise. I think if you're drunk around your colleagues, you're probably going to say something you regret anyway. So I always go for a non-alcoholic beer. So most of the time people don't know I'm not drinking. Just pour it in a glass and nobody knows. Have a tonic water, nobody knows it doesn't have gin in it. And then if people ask me if I'm not drinking, they usually ask why I'm sober. I just say it's a personal decision.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so it can be a bit difficult to navigate that sector or that part of it, the social aspect, but you just kind of have to stand where you are, and hopefully they'll bring in more and become more inclusive, and you won't just be going to the pub. It could be you go out for a meal or something a bit nicer. But yeah, I know quite a few people who struggle with that, trying to make work a bit more inclusive in that aspect.
Okay, we've got a question online for Tom. BritBox has a wide range of British shows from various decades. What is the process for older shows?
Okay.
Better audio. I've got heads in the way. Thank you.
So obviously, a lot of assets that we use for BritBox have potentially come from our archive. They may have been delivered to us. It depends what BritBox actually requires. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of them, but sometimes they can ask for a restoration. We have won awards from BritBox, especially just recently, actually, for some of the restoration work the film restoration team have been doing. But yeah, it really depends. Obviously, when we work with film, over time it just deteriorates and fades, especially if it's coloured. That'll mean there'll also be scratches, fingerprints, you name it. But we actually do have a software that uses a process of elimination between frames, and it can digitally remove that. But it's up to some of my colleagues to go in frame by frame and detail this work to make it as amazing as it can be. We do have 2 ingest machines that work in 16mm and 35mm. And we can ingest in up to 4K, so that enlarges the image a lot more, which makes it a lot more clearer to see. And normally, when that's being placed on BritBox, it makes it look really good. So, yeah.
I had to take it all the way back to placements, but when you first initially went into your placement, did you feel any kind of pressure or stress to do well to make a good impression, or? Yeah.
Happy to answer that if no.
Well, you can do it.
Yeah. I'll have a go. Yeah, I think no, because I think anyone who takes you on as a placement provider knows that you're a student and they'll know what year you're in. So I think they're fully understanding that you might make mistakes or you might not know. And I think anyone that does take you on and doesn't expect you to want to ask a few questions or might make some mistakes is probably being a bit naive, really. So I think no, I didn't feel any pressure. Obviously, it's you want to do well and you want to impress, but ultimately, I think the best way to go and approach it is to be comfortable and have the knowledge that those people there are willing to help you.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, so I'm in 3rd year, so I was just going to, as some of you guys experienced the same, kind of last year was a bit of a write-off in terms of any connections and things like that. So I guess what's kind of your advice for making those connections, not just in uni, but outside of it as well? It's I'm kind of in my head this year, I need to do stuff like that, but I don't know if you guys have any advice of how you kind of made those things, not just from placements and stuff.
So obviously I graduated in the pandemic. My MA was cut short. I think it can be really pressurizing in third year to think you immediately have to have a grad job. Listening to all of us success stories of, journalism. But it's hard. Like, it took me almost 2 years to get where I am today. And trust me, there were a lot of failures there. It takes a long time. And I think the first year out of uni is actually one of the hardest years of your life. So don't put the pressure on yourself to think you have to get a grad job immediately. Like, there are steps between there. And just keep networking and talking to your contacts and you'll get there.
No? Okay.
Hi, I've got a question for George. So obviously you are a freelancer, so you kind of have to be like your own brand. So do you think that the social media and like influencer side of it is important in trying to kind of like get freelance jobs?
So my freelancing has two sides. I'm a copywriter, kind of marketing. Those people do not follow my Instagram. That's much more kind of corporate and business. The other side is lifestyle journalism, and I encourage my editors to follow my Instagram just to kind of get to know me. I did start the Instagram partially to build myself as a brand. It hasn't gotten me any jobs so far, but I think for example, if I pitch to an editor, I'm a mental health journalist, lifestyle journalist, and then I put my Instagram handle at the bottom of my page, it only supports that I have experience in the field. But I don't post on my Instagram all the time. It's more of a side hobby. I don't earn any money from it. But I would recommend doing it. It's fun and practice my skills. And I get to do something a bit more creative. Copywriting can be a bit mundane at times. So it's more of a side hustle.
Any further questions from the floor? Okay, any online? No? Okay. Well, with that, I'll just say thank you so much to our panel. You've been wonderful, and thank you for the advice. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you to Ashley.